we're on.
I don't know if the fucking internet is going to hold out, but I guess we'll see. I don't know where it's the strongest, to be honest. But yeah, what a day! Let's start the rant.
Welcome to episode 2 of JJTalks.
Oh yeah, episode 2, podcast 2, ranting about useless fucking specimens and things in life. Although on a positive note, just to not have too much negative energy. But I will introduce the podcast with what I just told you.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, for those of us listening, we obviously have a little bit of awareness with respect to the truth behind the ongoings in the world. Otherwise, we wouldn't be listening to said topics and said podcasts and said channels. So we can all empathise with the wanky cuntiness of certain individuals that exist around us on our planet, just the incomprehensible incompetence. So I got my my jeans repaired, and well, I thought I got my jeans repaired. I paid to have them done, blah, blah. And they were navy blue, and I got them back. And the guy had used gold thread, and it's on the crutch as well, but like it's like blatantly obvious behind. And then they just did
the reverse
cash
crutch,
job ever.
which is even worse.
Yeah, even worse, exactly. So you use like the wrong color thread, and then in addition to that, the guy couldn't even sew, and just completely fucked up my pants. Like, so I'm gonna go back, throw them outside a shop like the cunt he is, and yeah, if that was in the UK, I'd slap that guy. But I only paid £1, although it's a principle. But I don't want to get into any issues in Peru, especially after what happened in Bolivia with the police arrests, which we might save for another podcast. But yeah, so that's the beginning of the day. I thought it's going to be a positive day, but when you live in societies where most people are fucking worthless, you have to experience just absolute idiocy. 9 to 5. So yeah, man. So how was your night? That's for the listeners. That's the negative energy gone. Now we're gonna contrast it with some positive James.
Well, funnily enough, you came up in conversation yesterday because of your current travels in Peru. A lady who is a friend of my friend's wife, who was out last night, she happened to be half Peruvian, and I was like, "Oh, cool, no way, my friend's traveling around there at the moment." And she was like, "Yeah, but you got to be wary of the police." And I was like, "Yeah, he had an incident with the police." Hence to the listeners, what was just mentioned before. And finally, when you talk about incompetency, you're able to escape that situation. So it's quite a fantastic story. Maybe a bit heavy for episode 2, but I don't know if you want to.
I mean, I could put it in now. Now you've said it, I've got to introduce it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's only polite. Yeah.
It's only polite, isn't it? Right. So the story begins in Santa Cruz in Bolivia. Me and 2 guys I met in a hostel. We were walking down the street after a few drinks, and the police just all of a sudden approached us on a bike, straight up to us, dressed in military khaki. They looked like characters from some fucking 1970s fascist dystopia. And straight behind them, they had an unmarked car, which we were about to find out. They put us all up against the wall. They searched us. I had nothing on me. The German guy had nothing on him, but the Austrian guy did have something on him. So they arrested us all, threw us in the back of this unmarked car, which they had waiting, because of course their intention that evening was just to go looking for tourists, round them up, and try and extort them for cash. So we ended up being driven back to this this police station, which was getting further and further and further away from a city centre. We were passing all kinds of police stations, but we were going to the city limits of Santa Cruz. And at that point, I had a I don't know whether I should say this on the podcast, but I had a rolled banknote, which is not illegal, in my wallet. I managed, with my hands cuffed to the German chap, to take my wallet out of my pocket in the back of this taxi and take all my money out and try and scrunch it up as much as possible to unscrew the rolled nozzle note, shall we say. And Unfortunately, when we got to the station, everything was dragged out of our pockets and placed on the desk. The only note I succeeded in not undoing is the one that I'd intended to. Because obviously it was
The
a dark
toot
car,
loop.
and yeah, I had to do it when the police officer adjacent to the driver was distracted. So everything's on my desk, and I'm not the type of person that takes lightly to being exploited by people. So the entire time I'm telling these so-called police officers, who, by the way, to set a bit of character, they've all got gold chains on. None of them have uniform. They're obese, they're fat, they're greasy. Type of guys that are rapists. And unfortunately, there would be an event in the prison, if we can call it that, where someone was sexually taken advantage of in front of the cells, actually, by the cops. But yeah, pretty brutal stuff. So I'm calling these guys what they are, a bunch of cunts. I'm going to kill your kids. I'm going to fucking chop your family up into pieces, because these are the types of things you need to say to these people. In terms of just moral stature, you should never submit to someone that's fucking kidnapped you and abused you and has taken advantage of you. You should be telling them exactly what they are, which is, you know, a piece of shit. So I didn't stop at all. Just blazing into them, and consequently they put me in one cell and the two other chaps in another cell, and it would become evident that, again, they wanted money and they were trying to extort €3,000 from the other chaps, €3,000 a piece. That would eventually be negotiated down to 200, which they ended up paying. And related to that payment, so I realized early on there was one guy at the desk with all our stuff, and he was watching Spanish soap operas. Okay, because again, these are greasy, scummy police officers. They have no work to do. There's not even a fucking telephone in this so-called police station. And while he's, distracted by watching sitcoms, I realised the three bolts on the cell had no lock on them. So every time I gauged that he was emotionally distracted, I unbolt one of the cell locks until all three were eventually done. And the last one made a fucking racket, I can tell you that. But then I made a noise to try and cover it up, and he didn't seem to notice. Again, too distracted by watching Spanish soap operas. So the door was open, and then they took one of the guys to the ATM. So I heard their cell open. One of them went out. They got on a bike, and that bike sped off to the ATM. Meanwhile, the guy that was watching the TV went back into the cell that they took one of the guys from. At that moment, I opened the cell, ran to the desk, grabbed my phone, grabbed my wallet, and fucking sprinted out. It's 2 a.m., middle of the night. I have no idea where I am. I'm just running. They heard the door go immediately, so they all come sprinting out. There's still bikes left, so I knew in my mind I had about 5 minutes left to find a solution to this issue, i.e., find a hiding spot, wherever. I don't know what I was looking for, just some kind of safety. And after 5 minutes, I found a red truck, and under this truck, I kind of hid behind the axle. And it was dark, and it was in one of these side suburban streets. And I was there for about 5 minutes. And then at 5 minutes in, I realized, shit, I've got my phone, I've got data, looked up on the map where we were, saw we were miles from the city centre. And then I think I WhatsApped you, actually.
You did.
And I was like, embassy. I was like, embassy, you need to call the police, blah, blah, blah. Not the police, but, the embassy officials, the foreign office, whatever. This is really serious. And then I looked at Google Maps for an embassy nearby, any country. The closest one was Spain, coincidentally, but it was miles out. And of course, this isn't the capital city. Bolivia has three major cities, this being the city of industry, Santa Cruz, and then the capitals are Sucre and La Paz, where the embassies and the consuls are located. So when I saw Spain was really far away, I thought, oh, fuck it, I'm not going to be able to get there. But then at that moment, I saw the bikes coming down the street with their flashlights, searching from left to right. And I tried to get as close to the back tire as possible. And then the flashlight turned on me, and I knew they had seen me. And the moment that flashlight came on me, I came back from under the truck and I sprinted the other way as fast as I could. But they're on motorbikes. They turned it around and they hit me full pelt with that bike in the leg. I went spinning into some ground. Before I could even recognize what was happening to me, I was curb stomped in the chest, maced in the eye, and dragged off into the station. And that's what I remember. I remember nothing between that point. And this station, by the way, to give you an idea again what these kinds of places are like, it's on the outskirts because it's not really an official police station as such. These are police officers with their gold chains and snorting drugs on the table in front of us and that kind of stuff. But the place is intended as a base for exploiting people. Again, no telephone, a couple of cells, one toilet. The cells themselves had a shower block in the back, and the shower block has a foot of shit and piss inside of it. So there's no toilet, there's just a shower where people have been shitting for years. The floor is completely riddled with piss. The stench is unbelievable. They're dragging by the back of, so I'm cuffed from behind, semi unconscious. They're dragging me through this piss with the truncheon through the handcuffs. And then I wake up in this cell. My face is burning because, again, they maced me. For those that don't know what mace is like a high grade pepper spray that's illegal in Europe without a license. So you can buy pepper spray in like an outdoor shop or something, which is, you know, for personal protection against animals or people or whatever. But mace is like high grade shit. It literally peels the skin off your fucking face. It burns like fuck. So I'm covered in piss. My chest is in pain. My leg is fucked up. And yeah, at that point, I remember, I think that the German guy, his name's Lee, came up and said, like, "Are you all right?" That's all I can remember. And then after that, I think because he had just come back from the ATM with the cash to buy them out, to find out that I had escaped and all this kind of stuff. So after that, they had left, and I was in the cell, and after probably about like 30 minutes in, I got back up and I continued my rant at them. I was screaming constantly, like, "You fucking cunts, I'm going to kill your kids, I'm going to chop you up into pieces. You don't know who you've arrested here. I will find you and I will burn every fucking person that you know down to the ground." And for the viewers, I actually would do that. Like, that's not bullshit. Like, if I had the opportunity and I thought I could get away with it, people that command that level of violence and corruption have to be dealt with in the same way that they treat other people. That's the only way you can stop and sponsor morality in this world, by applying the deeds that evildoers commit to themselves and to their family. You know, if you kill them, you kill a couple of their family members, they're going to think twice about killing other people's family. That's the reality. It's that age-old philosophical anecdote. If you had a train and there are people on the train and you could stop the train to save 1,000 people, but you'd have to kill 4, who would you save? There's no debate about this. You save the 1,000 people over the 4. I don't even know why people still debate it to this day. It goes into this wanky liberalist philosophy of, oh, you know, do we have the right to take those lives? You know, is it morally correct? Of course it is. You're saving 1,000 people, you're killing 4. That it's just logical, right? So essentially, yeah, I'm in the cell, I'm screaming at these guys, and I realize quite quickly there's a big problem here, because, you know, already kidnapped a load of foreigners. Kidnapping's bad enough. Kidnapping foreigners is pretty bad. They've attacked the foreigner. They've beaten me up. They've pushed me through shit and piss. You know, they're obviously not very intelligent guys. They're constantly doing coke and all kinds of drugs in front of the cells on the desk. What are these people capable of? Evidently, there might be no limit to what they could do. You know, they could have you killed and make it look like a suicide or an accident or something like that, or just make you disappear. So there was some bars behind the cell, right? Look, not a skylight as such, but at the top of the roof, just below the ceiling line. And though I was cuffed, oh, I've missed a part of the story. Switch back 20 minutes. So they brought in a Bolivian guy who was like a rent boy. He was like openly super camp, super gay. Clearly, he was, you know, working the streets, and they had arrested him. And they had another cell where a couple of Bolivians were, and then they had my cell with just me, and then the cell that was used, which actually I think was an office for the 2 other tourists, and they put him in a cell with me. And you know, it's not paranoia, but I was thinking, holy fuck, what if they're going to try and you know, pay him to do something to me in order for them to be able to exploit me for the money they exploited the others for, remember, because it's all about money. I'm a price tag at the end of the day. They want cash. So at that point, I managed to take, because men, something that men can do and women can't do, women have larger hips. So if a woman gets handcuffed from behind, she can't move those cuffs under her legs and up around so they're in front of her, but all men can, or most men should be able to. So I had the cuffs under, and I managed to bring them underneath my feet, which was fucking painful because the leg is obviously fucked and the rib is probably fractured at this point from the curb stomp, and then up over. So I had the cuffs now in front of me. And at that point, this guy that was just kind of like hanging around weirdly just started laying on the floor in front of the door to the cell. And then about 15 minutes later, they just took him out, which is really suspicious, and put him in another cell. So I think there was some kind of intent there. But in the end, they decided it might be better just to kind of let it kind of go naturally and see if I cave and pay them off. So then I went to these bars at the back of the cell, and I lifted myself up, which was very painful again. And the cuffs were fucking tight, man. And I just started screaming, and I don't speak any Spanish, so it's about probably 3:30, 4 a.m. at this point, and I'm just shouting like, fucking corrupt police, just keywords that people might be able to pick up on, just anything, screaming, screaming, screaming. And then a guy came up to the cell door, the boss man with his gold chain, I think the guy that had maced me originally, and he had his hands behind his back, and he told me to come over. So I came over, and he just pulled another mace can out and sprayed me clean in the eyes for the second time. Now, so I've got mace on mace now. So my skin is already peeling from the original mace, and I've been dragged through piss and shit. So fucking infections and all kind of stuff are going through my mind. It's fucking painful. Then mace on top of that, and that was fucking unbelievably painful. So I fell to the floor again. This point, I'm freezing cold as well because, of course, like, it's all open. There's no insulation. The floor's covered in piss. I'm soaked with fucking all this stuff. So I'm on the floor, and then every 15 minutes, trying to keep warm at this point, every 15 minutes they would come along with a bucket of water and just throw it over me. And water on mace is even worse. It's a bit like when you drink water after having chili pepper. Same principle. Like, it makes the fucking pain far, far greater. So they're doing this like some kind of fucking Chinese water torture mechanism for another couple of hours. And then I continue the screaming again when I get back up, and then there's a shift change. So obviously morning has come about now. This happened on Thursday evening at about 10 p.m. It's now Friday morning, and it's early as fuck. And there's a change, and they start taking out the Bolivians that are in the cell adjacent to me to try and see how much money they can extort from them. So they bring them to the desk. There's some negotiation in Spanish. Someone else shows up, a relative or a friend. They get paid off and they go. Now, one guy kept being brought back multiple times. He'd come back to the desk, they'd talk in Spanish, he'd go back to the cell, and then eventually a woman showed up, a very good-looking lady, probably, I would say, mid-20s, and I don't know the relation, I don't speak Spanish, don't know if it was a sister, a friend, a cousin, but basically what happened was there was a curtain behind the desk, and she paid off his debt with her body. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So of those men took that woman into the back room, and I don't know what exactly went on, but they were there about 15 minutes, and she came back out, and then the guy was released. So yeah, they took debt in that way. And then sometime later, my gate got opened. They put me on a chair in front of the desk, tried to make me sign all this paperwork, give fingerprints, etc. I refused because obviously I'm not taking responsibility for having done nothing at all. They asked me to bring out Google Translate. There's like 10% battery or something left on my phone, which is now cracked because of it getting thrown halfway across the landscape when I was hit by the bike. And yeah, I'm basically saying them like, I haven't done anything. You fucking kidnapped me. You've got the fucking problems. You're going to be in the shit. I'm not doing anything. And one guy was really fucking aggressive. He was trying to grab my arm, get me to do the fingerprints. Whereas another guy realized that, yeah, they might be in a bad situation. It might be better just to call it quits and just cut their losses and let me go. And that's what ended up happening in the end. Picked up my stuff except my belt, which they nicked. And yeah, walked out of the station. It's about 8 a.m. ish now, I guess. And called an Uber with what remained of my battery, got in the back of this Uber, stunk of piss and shit, as you can imagine. The driver must have been like, what the fuck? I tried to translate that I was attacked. I didn't want to tell him about the police. Tipped him, of course. Ended up getting back to my hostel. And that's the end of that part of the story.
Yeah, that part of the story was absolutely fucking crazy. And once
So,
again, we started off talking about incompetence and like people doing drugs while at work, people not being observant while they're at work. Um, Morally, you didn't deserve to be there, but you were able to escape. They apprehended you in the street. They used excessive force, extortion. Like, there's just so much going on here, and a complete lack of thought of consequences, even for their own lives. Because if things did go to pot, so at the point when you told me, I don't know if you remember, so what's at the embassy? The embassy wasn't open for a few hours.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
You mean what I tried to call the British embassy?
yeah. And you
I
told me,
Yeah, I emailed them because it basically the Bolivian embassy wasn't open, so I emailed the British Foreign Office. Literally gave them a perfect overview. You know, the email title, kidnapping, violence, it's all the keywords. They then came back. It wasn't even an auto email, some fucking probably intern wanker, because they're all just networked little kids that get positions in the Foreign Office, coming back saying, "Oh, yeah, if it's an emergency and if it is orientated around kidnapping, violence." Also, obviously, didn't even bother reading the email. Please contact our embassy. Tried to contact the embassy. The embassy is open from 8:30 till 12:30. Right, that's it. So these people are only working for that number of hours, and they represent the entire nation of Bolivia for British tourists, and they can only be fucking asked to open for 4 hours. And I called them probably 10, 12, 13, 14 times, all on my Skype record. They don't answer at all. They don't answer the fucking phone. That's the emergency line as well. And I did that for 2 days. They never bothered answering. So I haven't responded to them to this day, except they did send an automated feedback form, classic corporate style. Was our service satisfactory when you emailed us? Please fill out this customer satisfactory form. Of course, I gave them 1 out of 10 for everything, but that's the level of cuntiness that you have today in society. It's not actually about helping people. It's just about protecting your job, you know, sending out these satisfactory forms. And that's basically it. It's all done by the book. Everything is standardized bureaucracy, which is the very thing that cripples society, the lack of emotional empathy and lack of ability to coordinate with reality. Instead, they're like armchair anthropologists sitting in their fucking offices drinking their fucking Chardonnays or their fucking Merlots that are probably 150 a bottle paid for by the British taxpayer, pretending to do work when in actuality they're just networking at the Nepalese embassy, playing fucking polo and singing songs about champagne rights and fucking privilege. And I hate those cunts so fucking much. I would execute them at fucking dawn if I was allowed to tomorrow with no fucking haphazard fucking consequences for myself. I would do them all.
So
Don't think
back
this is
to that
allowed.
point. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, with jest, wink, wink. Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. You know, when there are weeds in the garden, you have to fucking dig them up and put weed killer in, otherwise they're gonna fucking grow back. And you know, some people that you know have been brainwashed with this ideal of pacifism may think that you know that these words you know somewhat harsh or unrealistic, but they're extremely realistic and they're absolutely necessary. um Absolutely, I would say that there's an argument that sometimes absolute power can corrupt, i.e., people can enter into things with a noble intention, but through the acts of doing things that may make them go into what they call the shadow realm or a dark place, their mind could be contorted as such. But I suppose it depends on the strength and moral fiber of the individual. So, but there absolutely is an argument of that. Like, you know, they say, you know, absolute power corrupts. So, you know, for example, there's a coup, a military coup, you know, even though most coups are funded and planned, obviously, as we know, by, you know, outside foreign interests. But let's just say there was a legit coup, and, you know, this rebel group takes over. What then might happen is that, you know, they might think, okay, well, you know, we've done this. Let's maybe just like take over somewhere else. And oh, actually, I've got power. Maybe I can, like, you know, abuse people and take some money here and spend it on things that I'm not supposed to. Even the initial intention was to, you know, depose these, you know, evil individuals. Sometimes people that have a slight inclination or, you know, moral fibers that aren't fully, you know, done, because none of us are perfect, right? And all of us can, you know, we all have deviant sides to our nature. None of us are pure, as it were. I'm certainly fucking not. But yes, there is like an argument that, you know, through doing these acts, you can maybe tarnish your psyche. I suppose, you know, just like it's like PTSD. Like, you know, a soldier could be like a good bloke. Oh yeah, I'm going to Iraq to, you know, yeah, you know, to help Bush and Blair. We all know that that thing, you know, was orchestrated for nefarious reasons. But through the act of doing this thing with good intention, these people have PTSD. They have to compartmentalize violence and killing people, and indirectly become sociopaths. some of the time, not all of the time. There's lots of people that leave military service with their integrity and their faculties. So that's the only, possible detrimental thing. But I'd say generally, and if the right people are doing what they should be doing, then the pros far outweigh the cons, and these
I
weeds need to be fucking rooted.
agree.
Absolutely.
I think the analogy of the weed killer is perfect as well, because the problem is people that spray lightly instead of going for the roots. You can get so many different products that attempt to restrain the growth of weeds, but some products go to the core, i.e., they kill the roots, and that's gone. It's down and out until the next kind of rootage springs up. But of course, if the ground is settled and sprayed with the right level of animosity and opposition against such weeds, then it's going to be a hell of a long time before it gets repurposed with the kind of the same origin again. What we're having now is this fucking liberalist mentality applied to everyone under the guise of positivity, when actually it's just weakness. This is the problem with so many self-proclaimed liberals. Most of them aren't actually liberals. They're just people that don't have the ability to act on what is right, and instead they cower behind this name tag called liberalism as a mechanism by which to evade responsibility for making positive change in society. And one prime example of those people are these fucking self-proclaimed hippies that you see all over the world. Now, there are genuine hippies, but most genuine hippies don't call themselves hippies, nor do they look like hippies. It's a spiritual essence that they have to act on what is right and not on what is wrong. It's the people that you see dressed in like Alibaba pants all the time that have 1,000 tattoos all over their face, 1,000 piercings, do all this weird random shit that they brag about on their gap years to blah blah blah. These are the people that call themselves liberals. But when it boils down to it, when there is an actual totalitarian attack on society, take 2019 to, well, the present day with this whole COVID nonsense,
Yeah.
just like we witnessed in Berlin when we went there, it was a fucking ghost town, because the people that call themselves hippies, the people that occupy places like Berlin and branded themselves as anarchists against the state, fighting for freedom, fighting for everything that matters, when it actually boils down to it and there's violence on their door, they go and they cower and they submit to the government and they lick their shoes like the weak pieces of shit they are. They take their jabs and they then preach that they are somehow righteous and virtuous and that they're helping everybody else, when in reality they're doing everything for them fucking selves. And that's the majority of people in the world. That's always been the case, whether you take it 200 years, 100 years, 50 years back in time, wherever and whenever and always, the majority of people are specimens of the environment they've been grown up in. And the environment for most people is an environment stipulated by the state. So naturally, the consequences of those stipulations are that people are going to act in a way that's provided to them to act. They do not think freely. And another great point you made earlier about corruption, potentially corrupting. The power does have the very sizable chance of corrupting those that aim to make better in the world. The book I was reading until a few days ago, The Commune and the Siege
Russian.
of the Prussians, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
in 1871, this commune. So the people that were those that stated that they were fighting against French kind of royalist bourgeois oppression ended up being the ones that were fucking massacring people on the streets with fucking hatchets. Now, I'm not saying the bourgeoisie side was any better. It turned out when they came in to retake the city, they committed a lot of violence and a lot of brutality. But the brutality and the violence did originate, ironically, from the people that were stating that they wanted to fight in the name of righteousness and freedoms and non-oppressive acts, and yet they were the ones that developed some of the most brutal, one of the most brutal regimes, if you can call it that, of all time. The Paris Commune was comparable to the Leninists overtaking St. Petersburg in 1917, the Bolsheviks. The same thing. They get what they want through cowardly slaughter, and they're almost worse, if not they are worse, than those that are responsible for governing our current realm. Those that own oil companies and pharma companies and are the hedge funds and they are the central banks of all. They are the origin of everything that we possess. They of course commit violence every single day, and they're evil. They're occultists. They're beings that we couldn't even comprehend or decipher, because their evil outweighs anything that we can compare it to in our own lives. However, there's a kind of ironic, mocking honesty to them. We know that what they do, they tell us what they're going to do. It's out there in the
Absolutely.
open. For me,
Absolutely.
that ironically is a little bit better. the murderer or the thief that admits to their murder, admits to their deeds, is better. It's a terrible word to use, but better than the person that preaches good and commits just as much evil, but can't admit to their own act. So yeah, I guess the core is what do we do about it?
I mean, we can talk about it. This is what JJ are doing right now. We're talking about it. Hopefully, raise awareness, provoke thought, and thought is the precursor to action often. So, through conversations like this, hopefully we can, spread a bit of awareness and just get people fucking thinking for themselves, man. Because, yeah, like you said, that people are given like a platter of thoughts that's very limited, and you can be in one of these boxes, you can have one of these dishes, one of these thought dishes, and you can consume that, and then that's what you're going to regurgitate because that's what you've consumed. You're going to fucking vomit what you consume. And these people consume shit. They consume what the status quo says, what the government says. And this is why you go on fucking dating apps and there are chicks that are saying things like, oh yeah, no Tories, no anti-vaxxers. Like, okay, like no Tories, no Labours. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. Yeah, I'm into, like I'm a liberal. However, I support Big Pharma, which is a complete oxymoron. So, like yeah, people are fucked. People are delusional. As we touched on in episode 1, there could be reasons for that. Chemical contamination in the water, in absolutely everything, the shower gels, the deodorants, the education system teaching people, poison or useless things that aren't necessarily going to make them independent thinkers, but more just like kind of like corporate robot slaves, things that are going to help uphold capitalism, which I'm not actually against. Capitalism's, reasonable if it's done with the right intent. It's actually fantastic.
Absolutely. I think it's a natural. Again, I'm not sponsoring capitalism because I think actually capitalism isn't really real. I don't think any ideology is real in the sense that what is achievable is just the biological instincts of all human beings. And whether you want to call it capitalism or communism, what exists, what political ideology that exists in any social sphere is a natural derivative of that society. Otherwise, it would not exist. People's utopian impressions of this can be this and this can be that. Well, it's possible, but it has to be that if the people within said society decide for it to be that. Something is communist because most people agree on it, or most people allow it to happen, which is the same thing. Some things are capitalist because, but realistically, it's all the same. The origin of all is social survival. It's that instinct, that prowess that all human beings have to compete with one another to better their neighbors. Now, everything is a self-interested act, but I don't know if we should go into that philosophical wormhole in this podcast.
Episode 3, maybe.
What
I think
might
we
be
should dedicate an episode just to that because
absolutely we'll do it on episode 3. Then we'll see how the natural course where it goes. But some people could say that everything is a self-interested act, which isn't to be confused with what is selfish. Self-interested meaning, as the analogy has, I know you've heard this a million times, James, but I've used this analogy for the context of this discussion in so many spheres. But a killer kills because he or she wants to kill. A teacher teaches because he or she wants to teach. Society determines that one is good and one is bad, but both are equally self-interested because both beings are doing what it is that they want to do. And for me, that's the core of everything. That is the absolute everything that is. However, we won't apply that to this podcast. Otherwise, we'll be here for 4 days straight, and we know where it goes. But certainly, we will, for our audience, touch on that debate in number 3, perhaps 4. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And one more thing, we started with like the guy who, I'll say in quotation marks, fixed your shorts or like your pants with the wrong color thread. It's like, okay, that's in, a developing country. No excuse for it. I feel like it could have even been deliberate as well. Like, who knows? Because like to be that stupid is just like, you know, unreal. And at the
I've
moment I
had it
saw the
before.
picture, I was just like, I thought it was a prank. Like, I thought you were sending me a meme. Like, your shorts look like a meme. It was like, it was almost like a joke. Like, yeah, I've just fixed these trousers. Oh God. Yeah, I've just heavy night last night. I've just fixed these trousers where somebody's just like been bummed, and I've just like, you know, fixed like the bum hole bit, and like the brown stroke gold thread is supposed to like signify like, I don't know, fucking anal juices or something. It was just
Oh
like
my God.
you
Jesus
know,
Christ.
yeah, it was.
Maybe that's what was going through his mind, but I personally don't think he'd have the mental capacity to do that, because if he had that imagination, he'd come up with something far more elaborate for that spot on the jeans, instead of just what looks like a crusty 2-year-old's attempt in a, I don't even know, like what do you call those classes that people used to take at school?
Textile kind of your
Style.
textile classes, yeah.
Oh, did I ever tell you that my first girlfriend, I had to, her mum was the textile teacher, and I was forced to do one, I can't remember what, I had to do one of these practical subjects, and I didn't like any of them. So I ended up being in the textile class, not knowing that my ex-girlfriend's mum was the teacher, and she fucking hated me as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
No flirting with the girls in that class.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh dear. Right.
um,
So, yeah, keep going then.
yeah,
How
yeah,
much
yeah,
time?
yes. Yeah, I'm not sure how long we've done. Let's have a look.
2 days and 13 hours.
But just one. Okay, cool. Is just like, you know, general, you know, incompetence. You know, like you said, people outsourcing things, people from working from home. There's just like a general decline in standards, particularly in what we call the quote unquote West, or, you know, in within like, you know, the powerful leading English speaking countries, the States, Britain, maybe even Australia to an extent. It's like, you know, what a policeman used to be like 30 years ago compared to what a policeman is now. You know, the kind of customer service that's given, the inefficient, you know, bureaucracy, the 18-factor authentication to log in and do something that's of really low value. Yeah, all of these things, you know, are completely by design. But once again, I think that's potentially like another whole conversation in itself.
Absolutely.
What are your
Our,
what are
our
your
audience on edge. Oh, we've got 2 audience members, Gaz and Baz, and the dog, of course.
yeah, we've given our viewers a lot today. That story about you being arrested is epic. I mean, you could make like a short movie just on that alone. Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. And also, we're gonna have to talk about what happened a couple of weeks after that as well, because that was fucking amazing too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my, never ends. And by the
uh,
time we talk about that, there's probably going to be another story as well. That's why I'm trying to
I
get
mean,
to
we're
where
living
something else
stories
happened.
as we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's literally a live feed. Yeah, so I guess on that note, then, before the Skype connection goes, or the person upstairs bangs even
Yeah,
more, or something happens, I guess we would call it an end to podcast 2, if you agree with
yeah,
that.
or not,
A
yeah,
good
to 0.2, whatever I want to call it, 1.1.
escape from Alcatraz, anything goes. And yeah, I'll try and upload it as soon as possible. The only thing that needs to be done, of course, if you're listening to podcast 2, you've already seen, hopefully, the first episode, and this won't matter to you. But what I was going to say to James is I've got to come up with a nice little thumbnail to apply to the videos. So again, if anyone that's listening knows anything about that kind of stuff, do feel free to consult, leave a comment, whatever, because I have no idea how to design a nice little comical thumbnail for the videos. So yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you, John, for the wonderful stories and your orator skills. And
Thank you very much.
until the next one.
All the best. Until the
Ciao.
next time. All right. See you. Bye.
Adios.